I never thought I would reach this point in my life, standing at the edge of something unfamiliar, something that made my heart race in ways I had long forgotten. I was 39. Not old, not young. Somewhere in between. Trapped, in a way, between who I used to be and who I was becoming. I had spent nearly 2 decades married to a man who, at one time, had made my world feel vibrant, alive. But over the years that color faded. Love turned into routine, passion into obligation. My husband, once so full of life and adventure, now seemed content with silence, with evenings spent in separate rooms, with the predictability of existence. And me. I still wanted more. I still wanted to be seen, to be heard, to be felt. I don't know when my son, Daniel, started noticing the shift in me. Maybe he always had. He was 18 now. Grown, confident, observant in a way that unsettled me at times. We had always been close, but lately his presence felt different, like he was watching over me rather than the other way around. "Mom, are you happy?" It was a simple question, asked one evening as we stood in the kitchen. The house was quiet. My husband had gone to bed early, and the ticking of the clock seemed to echo between us. I laughed softly, stirring my tea. "Of course, sweetheart. Why would you ask that?" Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Because you don't seem like it." I met his gaze, startled by the intensity in his eyes. When had he grown so perceptive? So mature? He was no longer the little boy who clung to my side. He was a young man now, and that realization struck me harder than I expected. I sighed, looking down at my hands wrapped around the mug. "Sometimes life just changes," I admitted. "People change. That doesn't mean you should stop living," he said softly. "You used to be so full of energy, Mom. What happened?" I wanted to tell him. I wanted to spill everything. The loneliness, the quiet ache of being unseen, the longing for something more. But he was my son, and some burdens were not his to carry. So I smiled. "I'm fine, Danny." "Really?" He didn't look convinced. Over the next few weeks I noticed it more and more. The way Daniel was always there, checking in, pulling me into conversations, finding ways to make me laugh. He had always been protective, but this was different. He wasn't just my son. He was becoming my anchor. One night we went for a walk, something we hadn't done in years. The air was crisp, the city lights flickering in the distance, and for the first time in a long time I felt free. "Tell me something," I said as we walked side by side. "What do you see for yourself in the future?" Daniel was quiet for a moment before answering. "I don't know yet. But I know I want to live life without regrets." I smiled wistfully. "That's a good goal." "What about you?" he asked. I stopped walking. The question caught me off guard. What did I want? For so long I had been a wife, a mother, a caretaker. My dreams, my desires, they had been pushed aside, buried beneath responsibilities. But standing there in the cool night air, I realized something. I didn't want to fade away. I didn't want to be just a shadow of the woman I used to be. I wanted to feel alive again. I said slowly, "I want to start living for me again." Daniel smiled. "Good." And in that moment something changed. I wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but for the first time in years, I was ready to find out. As we walked side by side through the quiet streets, a soft melody drifted through the air, curling around us like a whisper from the past. The warm glow of a small cafe spilled onto the sidewalk, where a few couples swayed to the gentle rhythm of an old jazz tune. The sight was mesmerizing. 2 people moving in sync, lost in the music, their worries forgotten, if only for a moment. I paused, enchanted by the scene. It had been so long since I'd done anything like that. Since I had let myself be in the moment, without hesitation, without thinking about what came next. And then, before I could react, Daniel grabbed my hand. "Dance with me," he said. I laughed, shaking my head. "Danny, what are you?" But he was already pulling me toward the soft light of the cafe's open patio. There were no questions, no time to refuse. One moment we were walking, and the next we were dancing. His hand warm and steady in mine. his other hand resting lightly on my waist as he led me with a confidence that caught me off guard. "Danny," I chuckled, still half protesting. "You don't even dance." He grinned. "Neither do you. So we're even." The laughter bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, real and unfiltered, the kind that had been absent from my life for far too long. The cafe music wrapped around us, guiding our movements, and somehow we danced as if we had been doing this forever. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation. Just the rhythm of the song, the gentle twinkle of string lights above us, and the feeling of being alive. I twirled, maybe not gracefully, but it didn't matter. Daniel caught my hand again and dipped me playfully, making me laugh so hard I had to clutch onto him for balance. "Look at you, Mom," he teased. "Didn't know you had moves." "Oh, hush," I shot back, my cheeks warm from the unexpected exhilaration. And then, just as suddenly, his expression softened. "You should do this more," he murmured, his voice almost lost beneath the music. "Do what?" "Live." The word settled deep in my chest, heavier than I expected. Because the truth was, I had forgotten how to live. How to enjoy moments just for the sake of enjoying them, without guilt, without worrying about tomorrow. I had spent so long being a mother, a wife, a caretaker that somewhere along the way I had stopped being me. But tonight, here, under these cafe lights, dancing to music that neither of us really knew, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like, free. Live. Daniel smiled as if he could see the realization taking root in me. "You're beautiful when you're happy, you know that," he said, twirling me one last time before the song ended. I exhaled, the rush of the moment settling into something warm inside me. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to start living again. As we left the cafe and continued down the street, something had shifted within me. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in a long time I was ready to find out. When we arrived home, the house was quiet, bathed in the dim glow of the streetlights outside. My husband was already asleep, as expected. The same routine, the same silence. But tonight something was different. I didn't want to sleep. For the first time in years I felt awake, really truly awake. My skin still hummed with the memory of dancing under the cafe lights, of laughter spilling freely, of feeling like me again. Daniel noticed. He always did. "You're not tired, are you?" he asked, leaning against the doorway, watching me with a knowing smile. I hesitated, then shook my head. "No, I don't think I am." "Good," he said, grinning. "Then let's do something about it." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" He shrugged. "Come on. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" The question stopped me cold. Because the truth was, I didn't remember. I had spent so many years making sure everyone else was happy. My husband, my son, my family, that somewhere along the way I had forgotten to ask myself that same question. Daniel pushed himself off the doorway, grabbing my jacket. "Come on, let's go." I frowned. "Go where?" "You'll see," he said with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. For a moment I hesitated. My husband was asleep, the house was still, and I should probably just slip into bed like I always did. But then I thought about the way I had felt tonight. How light, how free, and something in me refused to let that feeling disappear. So I grabbed my coat and followed him out the door. 20 minutes later, we were standing outside a dance studio. I turned to Daniel, baffled. "A dance studio? At this hour?" He grinned, unlocking the door with a key. "I might have convinced a friend to let us use it for the night." I shook my head in disbelief. "And how exactly did you pull that off?" He shrugged. "I have my ways." Before I could protest, he pushed open the door and flicked on the lights. The studio was empty, the polished wooden floor gleaming under the soft glow. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors lined one wall, reflecting us back in quiet anticipation. Something about the space felt sacred, like it was waiting for something to come alive within it. Daniel walked over to a small speaker in the corner and scrolled through his phone. A moment later, soft music filled the room, slow and rhythmic. I swallowed. "Daniel, I don't know if—" "No excuses," he interrupted, turning to me. "Tonight we just dance." I exhaled, glancing at my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked unsure, hesitant. But beneath that, there was something else, something waiting to break free. "Fine," I said. "But if I embarrass myself, it's on you." He chuckled. "Deal." And then, just like at the cafe, we began to move. First I was stiff. My movements felt unnatural, too controlled, like I had spent too many years locking away the part of me that once loved moments like this. But Daniel was patient. He guided me gently, his steps confident, his movements easy. "Don't think," he murmured. "Just feel." So I closed my eyes. And for the first time in years I let go. I let the music take over. Let my body remember what it was like to move without hesitation, without fear. And as I danced, something inside me cracked open. A flood of emotions, of memories, of longing for something I hadn't even realized I was missing. I had spent so long fading into the background of my own life. But tonight I was here. Alive, breathless, and completely, utterly free. By the time the music stopped, I was laughing. Giddy, exhilarated, awake. Daniel grinned. "See. Told you you had it in you." I shook my head, still catching my breath. "I can't believe I forgot how much I love this." "Well, maybe you should stop forgetting," he said. "Maybe you should do something about it." I hesitated. "Like what?" His expression softened. "Take a class. Go out more. Do something that's just for you." I stared at him, something stirring in my chest. Could I? Could I really step outside of the life I had built, the safe, predictable, comfortable life, and chase something just for me? The answer came before I even had time to doubt it. Yes, I could. I smiled, the decision already made. "I think I will." And just like that, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I wasn't just his mother. It was me. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. My body ached slightly from the unexpected night of dancing, but instead of exhaustion, I felt alive. I stretched, feeling the remnants of last night's exhilaration still pulsing in my veins. The way my body had moved, the way I had allowed myself to let go, it was intoxicating. I had forgotten what it felt like to be present in my own skin, to feel beautiful simply by existing. I was still caught in that feeling when Daniel walked into the kitchen, already grinning. "You're still glowing," he teased, reaching for the coffee pot. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help but smile. "I had fun last night. So let's do it again." I raised an eyebrow. "Again?" He leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee. I was thinking, why stop now? If you want to get serious about this, you should learn something new. Something exciting. I tilted my head, intrigued. "Like what?" He set down his mug and grinned. "Bachata." I blinked. "Bachata?" "Yup," he said, pulling out his phone and playing a song. A slow, rhythmic melody filled the kitchen. Sensual, smooth, and entirely unlike anything I had ever danced to before. "It's not just a dance," he explained. "It's about connection, expression, feeling the music, letting it tell a story." I bit my lip, listening to the song as he swayed slightly to the beat. The way he described it made something stir in me. A curiosity, a challenge. I had never danced like that before. And I wanted to. I took a slow sip of my coffee, pretending to be indifferent. "All right. Teach me." Daniel grinned. "You're gonna love this." That evening, we cleared space in the living room, pushing the furniture to the edges to make room. The moment the music started playing, a nervous excitement fluttered in my chest. "Okay," Daniel said, stepping in front of me. "Bachata is about fluidity, about staying connected with your partner. It's not just about moving, it's about feeling." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Show me." He took my hands and guided them to his shoulders. First, step side to side with a beat. 1, 2, 3, tap. I followed his lead, my movements hesitant at first. The rhythm was intoxicating, slower than salsa but rich with something deeper, something almost intimate. "Good," he murmured, his hands firm on my waist. "Now let's add the body movement." He rolled his hips slightly with each step, and I felt a blush creep onto my cheeks. "Relax," he teased. "You're overthinking it." "I am relaxed," I insisted. He smirked. "Then prove it." I exhaled, shaking off my nerves. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the beat, letting it sink into my bones. When I opened them again, I moved more fluidly, mirroring his motions, letting my body follow his lead. "Better," he said softly. The music swirled around us, filling the small space between us, making everything else disappear. It wasn't just dancing, it was something more. Conversation without words. A silent promise of trust. I had never danced like this before. I had never felt like this before. And I didn't want it to end. Over the next few weeks, bachata became our ritual. Every night after dinner, we'd push the furniture aside, turn up the music and dance. At first, I stumbled, my body resisting the unfamiliar steps. But slowly, something shifted. My movements became fluid, effortless. I stopped thinking and started feeling. And I loved it. One night, as the song faded, I laughed breathlessly, wiping a sheen of sweat from my brow. "I think I'm getting the hang of this," I admitted. Daniel grinned. "Told you." I collapsed onto the couch, my heart racing. "I don't know why I never did this before." He sat beside me, his expression softer now. "Maybe you weren't ready to." Thought about that. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had spent so long suppressing this part of me. Afraid to want more, afraid to break out of the life I had settled into. But now I wanted everything. I wanted to dance, to laugh, to travel, to wake up every day excited about what came next. And as I looked at my son, this incredible young man who had somehow become my greatest friend, I realized something else. I wasn't alone in this journey. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was awakening, and it was just the beginning.